God, we want to thank you that the message of Jesus and the gospel gives us a radical message different from the ones that we heard from all of history. Jesus, you asked unasked questions that we didn't think about, helping us to stop the rat race, the cycle. And I want to pray today, God, that you help us hear your voice loud and clear about what you want to do in our life, about how you're drawing us closer to the reality of what your purpose is for our life and why we're here on the earth. And we want to pray, God, that really the sacred romance would make sense to us today. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, well, I remember in high school and in junior high school, if you found yourself in the principal's office, you were in trouble, right? Well, I was a good kid then. But in college, I found myself at the dean's office and feeling, a little bit, you guys have that? A little bit like that. Feeling pretty bad. What happened was, one of our friends decided to visit the cafeteria. And I said, hey, I don't have class until later. You can use my ID card. That's a no-no. You're not supposed to do that. But hey, come on, it's just lunch. And so he took my ID card, went through, and when it was my time to go to lunch, I borrowed someone else's ID card because I didn't want to pay $5 for this stupid meal that I'm barely going to eat. And so I take the ID, and I'm about to swipe the ID, and the cafeteria lady says, looks at me, looks at the ID, "This isn't you." And I said, "What are you talking about? We all look alike." Why doesn't the stereotype work now? Why am I caught stealing cafeteria food for an identity crisis? I mean, come on. And she goes, "I saw you before. You're that guy that's in chapel a lot of times, leading worship, aren't you?" I'm like, no. Yes, no. I'm like, this is me. And like if you were an average intelligence person, you would say, I'm sorry, well, if someone else came to visit, you'd be truthful. But I'm like, no, I was very insistent that this was me. She said, she goes, all right, you want to be a tough guy, huh, hypocrite? I said, you're just prejudice. So I kept going on with this until, in fact, they called one of the associate deans. And the dean knew me because I was working, at school, and said, what's going on here? And I said, there's no problem. So we went downstairs at the office, and we started talking, right? And he goes, well, what happened? And instead of, for the first time, lying, insisting, again, without even knowing it, said, I don't know what the hell's wrong with the lady. We had different, we switched IDs. He goes, Sam, I trust you because you're a man of character. You're a man of God. I know, right? So he goes, yeah, you can go, don't worry about it, just take a pass here, go eat. So after going up, eating the sandwich and leaving that office, I felt something deep inside. A feeling of perhaps remorse, regret, a feeling that perhaps, did I just sell myself out for $5? Did I just sell my soul for $5? Did I gain for protecting my reputation as a hypocrite? And, what did I really gain from all of this? I think I felt very much to what Judas would probably felt when he sold Jesus for 30 silvers of coin, which is a lot more than $5. And that's a funny story, I think, of if we're really honest with ourselves. This is the story we find ourselves in many times in our life, in our world. We keep selling ourselves to get ahead or to keep what we have. You have Lois Lane sleeping with her boss to get the job as top reporter. You have Barry Bonds or Marion Jones lying about steroids and performance-enhancing drugs to outperform other people. You have MBA students and every other students in colleges and universities and graduate school that 50% admit to cheating and the other 49% are lying. They're being trying to be dishonest by being honest by saying they don't cheat, but they do. And we have a whole society built on this idea of advancement, and in order to do it, even though at times we forget why we do what we do, we keep selling our soul. We keep compromising until a point where you become something that you never wished you would become, but now it's too late. You know, and the message of Jesus versus the voice and the message of our culture is qualitatively very different, very, very vastly, radically in contrast with one another. Jesus says, and he asked this question questions that we never really thought about, because in our system we don't think about these things. Jesus' question is, he says, so what if you gain the whole world? Mark chapter 8. So what if you gain the whole world if you forfeit your soul? What is he asking? He's asking, who are you, becoming to advance your life? And we're like, I didn't even think of that. Who cares about that? Who cares about who I become? It's all about what I acquire, right? What I gain. How I look to my peers and to the world. It's all about getting ahead. And no matter what I have to do to get ahead, it's about making to the top, right? It's about becoming that person people think and define success. The voice of our culture says, kiss ass, take shortcuts, cheat, do whatever it takes to be on top. Jesus says, that's not really worth it. Did you ever really think about what you're becoming in the process of advancement? And then here we are, we sit and we're like, wait, I didn't even think of that question. When did that question come into focus? And the truth is, a lot of us in this room and a lot of us watching on YouTube are going to have to ask ourselves, when you come to this idea of the message of Jesus, the whole idea of the gospel, message of Christianity, the whole idea of this bondage that our culture lives in, we don't understand that the very beginning of Christianity starts with this question, who am I becoming? So the question, I think what we really need to tackle today is, how do you break free? How do you not sell your soul for profit? I think if you look with me in Mark 8, right here, Jesus says it like this. I think you could learn one very powerful lesson. And today, I want to give you not 3 answers or 2 answers. I want to ask you 3 questions. And questions are very painful sometimes. They require us to look in the mirror. And sometimes we don't like to do that. And this is what Jesus says. Jesus says in verse 34, Mark chapter 8, then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. And we're going to talk about the centrality of the gospel and the purpose and the cause of Christ, But today, and we'll go into that in the next couple of weeks, but today I want to focus on this question Jesus asked. Next, right here, Jesus says what? Remember, everything here is in the form of a question. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? Soul in Greek means the very breath of life, the reason you breathe. So if you profit and no longer have a reason to breathe, the reason to live, then what is the point? And then he asks another question, for what can a man give in exchange for his what? Soul, the breath of life. And in this chapter, in this passage, Jesus lays down very radical ideas. Very radical ideas that the sole reason why the Roman Empire, the most powerful, perhaps nation or empire in history, collapsed. Because this message conflicts with that idea of do whatever it takes for advancement. Do whatever is necessary for advancement. Jesus here talks about a very radical message. But before you can even understand the message, before you can even really grasp what Jesus is talking about, I think you're going to have to really understand this question. And why do, in English literature and in any form of language, do we ask questions? And in our world, in our culture, we ask questions in Jeopardy and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Because we want to what? Know the answers. But in ancient times, when a rabbi used to ask questions, he wasn't looking for any answers. What he was really looking for was what? Examination. Deep examination. Sometimes we answer things just by information. No, these questions are supposed to cause deep introspection, deep examination. And that's the question Jesus is asking here. I mean, so what if you gain advancement and lose your soul in the process? So what? I think if you asked this person here, let's go down, Madoff, the greatest schemer of all time in history. I mean, he took Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, the richest individual in our planet, more than 40 years to accumulate $50 billion to $60 billion. It took him the same amount of time to lose that amount of other people's money, his family's money. He's a hedge fund manager. If you don't know, that is is under house arrest in his penthouse in Manhattan. But he confessed as a 70-year-old man that he was a liar. Steven Spielberg, many charity foundations, all their money gone. He said that they're investigating now that Madoff actually never ever made a trade, one single trade. He never took a risk. He just took everybody's money, lied about it, and paid people off. And when he's 71, pretending to be one of the greatest, brilliant investors of all time, it turns out he was just a liar, fraud, that stole other people's money. So he's arrested now in his penthouse. I wonder if we asked him, should we go over there right now? To the penthouse and ring the doorbell. Hey, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about lying to your family, to your sons? But you gained everything. I mean, you lived your life in luxury. You were at the top. Now everything is crashing down. I think if you want to really look at Jesus' question, I think what you have to do is look at Madoff as a classic example. And right now, before you catch yourself in advancement, you have to, I think, first redefine. The question is, how do you what? define success. And Jesus, in Mark 8, redefines success. This is why he's asking the question, because he knows the motivation of culture. Ancient times and the current time, they're the same thing. For every one of us in this room, we define success according to the world standards, right? Advancement, being the top, being number one. Profit, fame, fortune, reputation. Having a good, life, whatever it might be. This message, Jesus is questioning our idea and definition of success. I think if you asked Madoff and you asked his family about this verse right here, what good is it, right? For a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul. I think they would know by experience the answer. That what? It's not worth it. You see, currently in your life at this moment, there are things that drive you to become or to advance to some place in your life at this moment. The question I have to ask you, and the question Jesus is asking you is that really worth it? Is that really what you want? I think that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Do I believe in this illusion of success? As long as I climb the ladder, my idea of happiness is do whatever it takes. Take every shortcut there is to make it to my destination. See, the gospel, Christianity, Jesus says that's not the goal. And I think if you want to talk about the goal in Mark 8, I think this is the second person I want to talk about today. Elliot, the former governor. They're all in Manhattan for some reason. New York is just messed up, right? The former governor here going. Guess where they're going? Church, yeah. That's where they're going, church. With the whole family, Elliot's Jewish, but his wife is actually Southern Baptist. She's actually a Christian. If you ask Elliot if he knew what would happen, him living this double life, I mean, what do you think Elliot had to say before, he had to disgrace his wife and his three daughters, about how he was just pretending to have integrity. They called him Mr. Clean, the sheriff on Wall Street. And he even closed down a lot of prostitution rings, actually in Staten Island too, and in many different places, but he saved himself one. To protect himself, to enjoy himself, And he said, no, every single one is wrong except mine. Mine is allowed because, I do all these all these great things, so I'm going to, keep one for myself, and, I think this is okay for me. But you see, the former graduate of Princeton University, Harvard University, horseman, the greatest prestige in life, climbing the ladder to governor in a very fast pace. Many political analysts were saying that the former governor would have even, the potential to become president one day. You know what? He gained the whole world too. He's still wealthy. Still lives in a penthouse, still. But what do you think happened that day when he had to tell his wife and his daughters who he really was? And the second question I want to ask is, I think this is the question Jesus is asking. I think I want to say it again repetitively to us. So, who are you becoming? and Michael Caine. So, you're going to be very distracted. But I want you to try to pay attention, okay? This whole thing about who you're becoming is so vital. The music is background. To understanding what drives our life. And look at this verse right here, okay? Hopefully we could see it. Not that verse. But, and this is a question, verse 37, okay? I want you to focus with me. For what can a man give in exchange for his soul? I think if you asked Elliot if he can have back his integrity, have back his soul, be able to repeat that process, I think he'll give anything. He'll give all that he has for that. But you see, here's the thing about Jesus. Before we even understand the whole idea of what he's trying to convey here, okay? For most of us, we still are going to go out and still be tempted by the ambitions and the picture of advancement. The question I want to ask before we pray is this question, okay? The last one. What is it? Perfect timing. The question is, what do you have to what? What do you have to lose to change course? The culture says, what do you have to do to gain? Jesus says, what do you have to lose to change course of who you become in your life? Not your destination, not what you can gain, but today. Jesus is asking a very, very painful question. What do you have to lose to change course of what on the way you're becoming? And that comes to the conclusion of what the whole idea of Jesus is really all about. The whole idea, what the gospel is supposed to do. Why Jesus died on the cross, which we're going to go into next week more. See, Jesus came to save what? The soul, right? The reason for life. Because let me tell you, all that advancement, one day when you die, you can't take that stuff. You can't fit a mansion in, the coffin. Not your cars. And the truth is, in the end of the day, what Jesus is saying, the man with the most toys do not win. They actually lose everything that matters. It's the man that, gives everything away and becomes something. And we go, well, what are we supposed to become? Well, there's a picture of what you can become. Jesus talks about in Mark chapter 8. We'll talk about more next week. But today, if you want to begin that journey, you have to ask the question, what do I have to lose? What do I have to give up? What are some painful things that I'm going to have to let go if I want to change the course of who I'm becoming? Stand with me and pray together.